Hey, all, welcome back to That's Goblin. Today we're going to be talking about D&D versus Daggerheart in combat. So, today it's going to be a little bit of a biased subject since I love Daggerheart so much. But I think what we want to take away from this, because I have sunk in 6,500 hours into D&D, and we're hitting about 320 hours into Daggerheart now. It'll be like my 80th-ish to the 85th game, I think. So without really sounding too biased, it is coming from a place of knowing rather than just, this system is better than that system. Or at least I try to think that I am a little bit, objective about it, but ultimately the bottom line is I'm pretty in love with the Daggerheart system, so that's probably going to bleed into it. Anyway, let's get into it. So, to start off with, let's talk about combat mechanics. D&D is turn-based. It is complex in its mechanical approach. So there's a lot of things to keep track of, a lot of things to know, spells, abilities, and so on and so forth. And last but not least, the slowness of things to happen. So, just to put things into perspective, we have a person's turn, and then they have an action, bonus action, and movement action on top of the fact that they could have reactions. And within those, a character could take anywhere between, if they're really quick and efficient, 10 to 20 seconds to a couple, 3 minutes. And that's probably being generous, because I have seen players that can go way above that number. But long story short, that's the reality of it. And if we had 6 players on the table, which generally is the average size of a group, or 5 to 6 players, so 6 players around the table, if every single person is taking approximately 20 seconds, and that's just super efficient, right? 20 seconds each player, that's approximately a minute and a half plus the GM, so that's 2 minutes of wait time per player, and that's the fastest game of turns that you can ever have, because on average you're having about 3 to 5 turns on a combat in D&D specifically. So in this context, it's on a very efficient turn-based mechanic on a 5-turn combat, which more likely it's going to be 3. We're having approximately 10 whole minutes to finish one combat. I can tell you from now, I don't think anybody has finished 10 turns at combat in 10 minutes. I've never experienced it, and I've run so many games. But the idea is that is the most efficient you can potentially make it, and everybody just their turn, they describe what they want, they say what they want, they set all the damages, and boom, 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 then is the next person, and the GM is also as fast as efficient, right? And even if we want to double that number, 20 minutes is still a very fast combat that I've also never seen. On average, a short combat is 30 minutes, and a long combat is anywhere between an hour and a half, 2 hours to 4 hours, So those things do matter, and without making it like the worst thing in the world, D&D works. Like, it's been working for D&D 5th edition at least, has been working for 10 years, and then some. And now the 6th edition is going to be coming out, and then it's the 5th iteration of the previous one. So it obviously works. This is not like the problem that is like it's a grinding halt that you can't do anything with it, but it is a problem to the point where I almost avoided combat like the plague, and I would probably do them once every couple of sessions, and sometimes once every session if the players really wanted it. But I would never incorporate it like specifically, like if I could get away with it, then I'll get away with it. I'd rather just keep doing the role play, because it's a lot more fun, it's a lot more engaging, and getting everybody involved in action, stuff like that, etc., works well. And a quick hack, even though this video is not about it, is how doing the skill challenge. I don't know if anybody's heard of the skill challenge from the 4th edition. It's a beautiful concept where instead of doing like combat, then you can be like doing a skill challenge where people will roll their skills to try to succeed a particular threshold, like a 13 or 14 or 15 depending on the challenge. and they need to beat it X amount of time, but if they fail 3 times, they would fail the entire encounter. And so sometimes if I want to make it really difficult, I might give them like a 26 success trigger, and only 3 failures would then cause them to fail. And most of the time people tend to succeed because, you know, of inspiration that they've stored up earlier and so on and so forth, and just the challenge is just low enough for them to succeed more often than not. But that's the whole point, right? But anyway, that like makes it a much more dynamic flavor than, okay, this is another combat and we're running and we have to do the dash action, do this and do that and perform an attack and yada yada yada. You can do all that in a very cinematic way, which is beautiful. But obviously we're talking about specifically combat. And now we're going to compare it to Daggerheart. So specifically, the streamlined mechanics is what makes it fun. And probably the wrong term is streamlined. It's the dynamic mechanics, I guess, is more what I'm going with. Even though you have stuff they have to keep track of, like armor, you have to keep track of stress, you have to keep track of hope and your HP. It's way more like things to track of compared to D&D. But it's so dynamic and it's so fluid, specifically the hope mechanic. When you get a fluid resource like hope, and it's constantly shifting and triggering back and forth, there is a flow, an ebb and flow with the battle. Like there isn't just, okay, we win, or we lose. It's that constant exchange. And one of my favorite things that they've done is how in the middle of combat, which we haven't even touched on, is the fact that the turns are free, so there's no initiative, so everybody can do whatever they want. But the idea is, if they continue to succeed, they continue to succeed over and over and over and over again. It causes them to keep accumulating those action tokens or whatever that I have. But as soon as they fail, it's now my turn. That dynamic is so nice because it's easy to determine whose turn is where. So if it's your turn, then great. If it's my turn, then I get to go and do stuff which, depending on how much resources I have, I could hit you pretty hard. And so that flow of battle is something that D&D doesn't have because it's very strict on its turn order. If the only thing that they have that is kind of dynamic is the legendary actions, and that came in later, I believe. But you know, specifically the mythical actions, which was so much fun. I think what they did with mythical actions was pretty cool. But the idea stays where it's still strict within the turns. So if I can't do anything between now and another 5 minutes, which, by the way, just to touch back a little bit on D&D, on average, my players are waiting around 5 minutes till their turn comes in. Let's go back to Daggerheart. With the faster turn and the dynamic combat, with the constantly ebb and flow of combat, it creates things to be a lot more dynamic. And you could even argue that it's probably not faster, but it is. It's way faster. Like I ran 2 combats in a matter of like an hour and a half. I've never done that before. And it was so fast and so fluid that I was just like, you know what, I can run combat every session. And I have. And I've been running combat every single session without fail. And just because it's easy, it's fast, it's fluid, and they feel so dynamic. And it's like the combat shifts and changes the field, especially with the fear tokens and how free you are with them and to do what you want. It creates a truly dynamic way of doing things, which we'll go back to the first words that I use, a bit more modern. So it's a modern approach to roleplay where you want to do more of the cinematic action, like this whole heroic feel to it, like almost movie level like quality of action sequence. So yeah, from a mechanical point of view, it's just flows a lot more nicer. And sure, they have the cards. Yes, they have all of these things, but if you read the cards and look at the mechanics, they are so open-ended that it creates enough of a buffer for you just to be as creative as you want to be. And that's the beauty. instead of you sitting there be like, oh well, I'm gonna have to read the card and figure out exactly this, is like, no, what do you want to do? Is like, I just want to attack him. Cool, apparently you have this fire attack or whatever, it's gonna cost you a stretch for the wizard's attack to do it. Are you sure you want to do it? It's like, yeah, it's fine, I'll do it. And then he does it, and then boom, deals damage. And that's how it goes, and that's how you do it. And it's a very cool way to do it. And you can even argue that, oh, but you can do the same with D&D. You just ask them what they want to do, and then you kind of guide them. But in this context, it's whatever things that you were looking to do, you can do. There isn't like, oh no, you have to follow the specific rulings or whatever. Yes, there are rules and you have to follow certain guidelines, but like one of the things is counterspell. It counters any magical effect as well as spells, which really threw me off guard, because usually the way I do is like, oh well, this is a magical spell. This is the creature has this special effect and therefore it can't be countered. It's like, oh, but it is magical, right? It's like, yeah, but it doesn't say it's a spell, therefore you can't counter it. And that's the argument that was made with D&D. And with this system, it's like, no, they've actually added it into it, where they've made it a little bit more open-scaped, so to speak, to make it a bit clearer and easy for people to be like, hey, we can bend it in any way we want. So we touched on this a little bit earlier on player engagement, and like I said earlier, that D&D on average, players are waiting anywhere between 2 to 5 minutes on average. By the way, this is not like the thing. Like, I remember I played a really long combat. I think it lasted for about 5 or 6 turns, but we were there for 4 hours. You can do the math. I think, yeah, I remember like my character was like a blood hunter, and so all I had was the 3 attacks that I did, which I've already prepped myself and all that, etc. And so that's it. Like, all my flair and pizzazz is gone. It's just me attack, 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 2 action, attack, an action, 2 attack actions, and then a bonus action attack again, and that's it. And then maybe I move, maybe I do, like, that's, I literally tell to the GM that I'll pre-roll, and then my turn comes in and I finish in like 5 seconds, because I'm like, yeah, I did this much damage, this guy died, cool, done, next person. Because the game was so long because of so many things on the board and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, it was like a very cinematically cool moment, but from a player perspective, it was very slow and painful, because there was no interaction between the players. If that same combat was run in Daggerheart, my character would shine. I would literally be doing so many things, because every single player that sits in a Daggerheart game and they look at each other, everybody's engaged in the same time. Everyone is engaged. Not a single player is sitting out on the sidelines. Why? Because they could go at any moment. And so they're looking around for the perfect opportunity to be like, actually, I'm going to jump in now. And they jump in, which is really cool. And so the beauty behind it is, if I was in that context in a Daggerheart system, my character would not just be like, I attack and I attack. It's like, I'm going to run in and I'm going to cut down this tree and push it down to kind of create a barricade. In D&D, you have to have HP of the tree and blah, blah, blah. Like, maybe he can even say to me, like, hey, this is going to be a really hard task. I might make it a 26 or something, or a 25, or whatever the scenario is. And therefore, it's like, actually, this is going to be pretty tough. Hey, can I get a hand with this because of X, Y, Z? And then we roll for it. And if we got cut, then great. If we didn't get a go, then that's on us. And then we failed, giving the initiative back to the GM to then do whatever they want. So it creates a lot more freedom to do what you want. And that is why the player engagement from the Daggerheart system is so much more fluid than you waiting for your turn to come in, and then you get to do this. You're constantly shifting and waiting for somebody else to do stuff, so then you can jump in and do your own thing. Like, I played a bard character, and usually bard characters are like super supportive and stuff. My character was going out of my way to be the center of attention to that creature, and all I was doing is spending my resources to support my allies, sure, but I was making sure the creature focused on me, and they were attacking me, and I built like a tank bard in that system, which is pretty funny. But I basically came out of that fight without taking a single point of damage, and it was glorious. And my character kind of just shrugged everything off, took the aggro from everybody else, took it onto himself, and then managed to keep the creature distracted long enough for the rest of them to actually kick its ass, because my character didn't have any damage. He was not built that way. But that was the beauty of it, right? That was what was happening. But you just have to understand that this dynamic of players being engaged at all time is so important, because as soon as they stop being engaged, what's going to happen? They're going to look at their phone and they're going to scroll through TikTok or whatever game that they're playing on or stuff like that. And by the time it's like, oh yeah, okay, and they put their phone down and they waste like another minute or two reading their resources to try and figure out what they want to do. And yes, that's bad player behavior, but you can't blame them, because that's just what the game kind of gets you to do, you know? But Daggerheart, the amount of times that people don't pay attention on my table is like slim to none, because most players are super engaged, and the ones that are not usually are not engaged regardless, and it's just a matter of you just telling them, hey guys, come on, let's do this thing, and that happens. But most other players are just onto it, which is beautiful. Now the next part we're going to be talking about is customizability and flexibility. This question is unfortunately going to go to D&D. You cannot compete with a behemoth of a game that has God knows how many resources out there for its resources and everything to actually perform the task that they had. And they are insane. Like, the number of classes, subclasses, races, and the like is ridiculous. It's so much. It's so many resources, and Daggerheart can never compete on that context. And I am a dirty min-maxer who loves mechanical, building things. And I literally built characters for fun and then never played them, because it's just like, it is what it is, because I GM all the time. But the amount of beauty that is D&D and the options that you have, you can't compete with it. Nobody can. And Daggerheart is just starting. It's still a baby, and I'm not saying that it can. I'm just saying that we can easily create new contents for it. But by the time we get to as big as D&D, it's gonna be a long while. At the very least, another 5 to 10 years minimum. So there's no comparison there. D&D wins by a landslide, because options, right? And I hate to say it, but I think even if Daggerheart had as much content as D&D would probably still win, for the sole reason that the number of options in Daggerheart is a lot more limiting than D&D. Even though the way D&D is structured and everything and stuff like that, I feel like there's a lot more options. Before even going further, you have 20 levels, which is in and of itself is more options. But then, there's feats and everything and stuff like that. Yeah, it's hard to really pinpoint it, but I don't know. I've always felt like D&D is just better when it comes to customization than Daggerheart. All right, this is the end of the video. So let's summarize the whole video of saying why D&D is worse when it comes to combat than Daggerheart. And honestly, without going into the nitty and gritty of the mechanical things and so on and so forth that I've already blurbed about, D&D in and of itself is so slow in combat, and that is the biggest problem that it has. Take that away, then it's just a role-playing system like any other, and to be honest, you can just do that with any other system. But D&D is elegant. It has a very simple advantage system. It has a very simple, roll and add your modifier system, but it's so slow because of its options, the plethora of options that it has. And with that, I feel like even if Daggerheart had more options, it wouldn't be as slow because of the modernized feel of the mechanics that they use. And that's the beauty of mechanical, you know, like we're growing as, you know, new games, new stuff, etc., etc. We're bound to be better, you know, and this is, I feel like, the new, better way of doing combat. Like I said, there's a bit of a biased review, but it's just so smooth, so fast. And if none of you guys have actually tried Daggerheart yet, I urge you to get your game group together if your GM is not interested in running it, because they have the, you know, I invested so much money into D&D. D&D is a great game, therefore we should never play another game. Literally, they put all of their resources for free online. So there's no reason for you not to try it. But if they didn't want to because of their own reasons, and that's okay, just take it on yourself and try to run the game yourself. And that's not a big deal. It's, you'll learn that it's actually quite somewhat of a simple system to do, especially if you played D&D before. Like, if you played any high fantasy role-playing system, picking up Daggerheart is actually very simple. And if you've never played any system before, Daggerheart is way simpler than D&D. Now that I went in and I did my review about it the other week, a month ago, I think now, and I'm thinking about it again, looking at how everything is, it's so simple to run Daggerheart. Like, if I came into Daggerheart first and then went to D&D, I'd find D&D as like this really complex system and might be too grindy for me. I remember looking at the Witcher system, the role-playing system that they had, and the first thing that I felt was like, this is so crunchy, there's no way in hell I'm gonna pick this up. And it's arguably just crunchy enough for it to work, which that's what good games are, but it wasn't for my taste. And I'm not the kind of person, like, I played Powered by the Apocalypse games where they're a little bit more easy and simpler, but I just want that little bit of crunch, and then Daggerheart came in with that perfect mix of the two. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the review. Please leave a like and a comment, and maybe even a subscribe if you're interested to watch some more video content of what Dice Goblin has in store. I am actually thinking about doing this really crazy event, either a 24-hour game that will be videoing and then posting it on YouTube, or a 40-hour one. I haven't decided yet. But like just doing this extreme event and maybe like see if we can make that happen. See which one you guys prefer more, and write in the comments, and then I'll see if we can do it in the future. Probably not anytime soon, but definitely been thinking about it, so it might happen in the future. See you guys, catch you around. Thank you so much for watching.